Hello, everyone. Earlier today, I actually did this broadcast. So this is a re-recording. The main reason I'm doing a re-recording is because, unfortunately, I missed one of the signs, and also I um, broke the video into two parts. So it wasn't a really good-looking video. Number one. Number two, you shouldn't have to piece things together. Number three, I left out a sign when I was doing my sign by sign analysis. So I just made a lot of mistakes this morning. And I can blame any number of things for that, but basically it all falls back on me, and it all falls back on me to correct it, which I'm going to do right now. And hopefully we're going to get rid of some of the raspiness of my voice with this particular broadcast. You'll notice me taking breaths a little more frequently. That's because of a condition I've developed connected with my back problems. And so I need to actually make sure I'm speaking more from my diaphragm than from my throat. So just hopefully we'll be able to compensate for that in a little while. And but you'll also hear more pauses when I speak. So, and I do tend to rush through things too quickly anyway. So let's see if we can make this a little bit more coherent. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm a Vedic astrologer of 30 years plus practice. I tend not to use the outer planets. I tend not to draw a lot of significance from the outer planets. As I feel I can do most of my best work working within the Vedic system. But again, for those of you who like the outer planets, I'll mention them, and we'll go from there. But let's see now. Let's see where I was tapping up this morning. So also my mouse failed this morning, and I had to reset it. Just a bunch of different things happened. So that was so for those of you who saw the video, you saw a rare animated Gary Gomes poking at things in the chart. So I'm going to pull the chart for right now, and hopefully we'll have a better session than we did earlier today. If you would like to learn astrology, please contact me directly. My phone number is 508-525-0001. I do still have plans for a formal school that hasn't gone away. And I may get a break in that direction this year. So hopefully with God's will and with the grace of the divine, we'll get that done. The other thing is, I do have some interviews in the can. I have some interviews that I have to edit in the can. And also I have some interviews coming up relatively soon. So hopefully you'll tune in to see those. They're pretty interesting. The people I have are really knowledgeable people, and just they're good folks too. All right, so this is the chart we have for this is being done at 2:49:52 in New Bedford, Mass. This is the chart for today. And one of the things that I want to mention, so there was a lot of activity the week of April 20th. This past week, we had, for those of you And the week before, we had a lot of activity as well. We had a Saturn-Mars unification. We also had let me see if I can pull the share up. All right, we're screen sharing. I like to do this a couple of times to make sure that it really does take. Okay. And it looks like it's recording. We also had this past week, Mars entered Pisces, and it was a valuable lesson for me because at the same time Mars entered Pisces, Mercury was retrograde, about to turn direct, and I got into some stupid arguments myself. So I think that very circular arguments, a lot of repetition, a lot of misunderstanding, and also to a certain extent, people lying about what they were saying. I tend to try to tell, just because of planetary positions I have in my chart, it's actually rather difficult for me to lie and knowingly do it. It doesn't mean I don't make mistakes, but for me to knowingly lie or misrepresent something is really, it's almost anathema to me. I can't really justify it, except in extreme circumstances where it's, let's say, potentially life-threatening. So I think, so that doesn't make me a better person. Don't get the wrong idea. That's not what I'm saying that for. I'm saying it basically, but I was astonished at how much lying and manipulation I saw in media, in communications, in a variety of things happening over the past 2 weeks. And a lot of that was because of Mars and Saturn. Essentially, Mars and Saturn is kind of a punitive combination. This going back a couple of weeks. And Mars and Mercury is really like a supercharged combination for misrepresentation. Also, so again, one of the things we have in the United States chart is the media is a Mercury-Rahu conjunction. So we look at the US chart, we'll see Mercury and Rahu in the 8th house. And that, to me, indicates the manipulative behind-the-scenes media. So I think one of the things, and again, if you want to get really conspiratorial about it, a manipulative behind-the-scenes government. I choose not to get very paranoid about stuff like that. Government, to a certain extent, always has to operate in secret. It's not, they're not going to tell us everything they're going to do. And that's true of virtually any country. But it's been interesting because I've seen a lot of drama around, number one, the presidential elections, but number two, and when I was looking this morning, Mars, Mercury, and Rahu were in the 9th house of higher education. And we saw a lot of riots happening around the world, a lot of governments under attack because of what's happening between Israel, Hamas, and in the Middle East. We saw a lot of people over the past month essentially sticking to belief systems, or not sticking to belief systems, that's the wrong expression, advocating positions which were just full of bile towards certain groups. in particular towards Israel and the Jewish people, and also these were happening not only in government circles but also in college campuses. So we had riots this past week or not riots, excuse me, demonstrations happening in Columbia, a variety of large colleges across the country. It sort of made me nostalgic for the late 60s because there were a lot of similar demonstrations going on then. I think one of the things that I wonder about, is whether or not we'll see riots, or not riots, but demonstrations. I apologize for using that term. Demonstrations occurring at the conventions, the Republican and Democratic, more likely the Democratic conventions, as we did in 1968. So I think one of the things to look out for is over the next 3 months, we're seeing a lot of disruption. Mars won't get out of this sign for about another, won't get into Taurus until really July or so, and then go in August. It will go into Gemini, where it's going to aspect the lunar eclipse in September, October. So that particular combination, to me, indicates violence around the elections, violence around, and connected a lot with what's currently happening right now. I wouldn't be terribly surprised, as I said, to see a lot of demonstrations this summer. The other interesting thing is we have a lot of activity in the course because Saturn is aspecting Venus and Jupiter. Jupiter has just brought out the hearings in Arizona on the election interference, which really seems bizarre that it's coming out at this time. I didn't read the rationale for why the timing is coming out now as opposed to a lot earlier. It just seems very suspicious, to be honest with you right now. And the other thing is we're also having a lot of switching allegiances in parties. So groups that were once thought to be solidly Democratic are turning Republican. Groups that were thought to be solidly Republican are turning Democratic because of the Democrats embracing neoconservative ideas. But that actually happened as far back as Bill Clinton. And when I say neoconservative ideas, I mean essentially active government intervention and regime change in different parts of the world. So I think this is going to be interesting. The other thing we noticed with the Saturn-Sun conjunction, or Saturn-Sun aspect, Saturn-Sun-Jupiter-Venus aspect, is there's this strong desire to control or moderate thought. And this occurs not only in situations such as what is happening in Australia or Brazil or in Canada with Scotland, with prohibitions on hate speech in Scotland and prohibitions on which videos are shown around the world, as is happening in Australia, or whether or not media sites can be banned, or can be subject to censorship, as was the case in Brazil. But also, this touches on the legislation to ban TikTok. Now, well, I'm no fan of TikTok, to be honest. No, and again, it's nothing against the people who are on TikTok. But it's essentially this desire for control of information. Now, that stream has always existed around the world. No government wants to let out information which is embarrassing to it. But I think it's with the prevalence of social media, it sort of hit new heights. And I think one of the things that you'll see over the next 3 months is actually fights, maybe even with Mercury in Pisces and then Mercury going to Saturn, some sites being shut down or closed by governments, or heavily censored by governments. And this is consistent with elections, with media presentations. And again, like I said, I have nothing against the media. I'm not sure the information I'm getting is accurate. Okay, so that's how much I get concerned about media presentations. They're not trustworthy anymore, and that includes the small providers. You know, there are some people I trust that I watch, but they're mostly small, relatively independent organizations. But again, they get it wrong at times too, it seems. You know, so it's not really, and I'm not saying this is some omniscient being. You know, when you go in and cross-check, it's always important to know what the bias of the group you're listening to is, and what the bias of the fact checkers you're listening to are, what the biases of the fact checkers are. So I think it's just really double check, triple check, quadruple check, and find out what people actually said. Get speeches when you see clips of speeches. Try to look up the original speech and see what was said in context. That's what I'm advising you to do, because anyone can take things, and it's relatively easy for most people, except for me apparently, to edit these things. And I'm an old guy, and basically make things up, make things or twist things so they're not what people actually said, or not what they actually meant, or put new layers of meaning onto things. So I think it's really important to be an informed consumer of media and not just reactive to what you see on your favorite channel or your favorite YouTube provider. It really, and again, the other thing is, who has time? The Saturn, Jupiter, and Saturn, Venus will essentially cause, again, some slowdown in the markets. Venus, Mars, Mercury, Saturn, and Moon and Ketu are all connected right now. And if we include Uranus here, which was strong around April 20th, the conjunction was active. And it is interesting. I am interested in things like free music, which I haven't been interested in I've always had like a back interest in it, but it's made me more aggressive about it lately, more inspired by it lately. It's so there will be some kind of effect here, but Saturn in this particular sign alone will create innovations. Saturn aspecting Jupiter, Uranus. The innovations may not be good innovations, so you may see more AI. We are seeing some worse economic indicators than we have seen in a few months. And so inflation is going up, and it's connected with oil. We are seeing more lies about wars going on, the Mars-Mercury conjunction, and Rahu is putting us into a panic mode about World War III. Okay, so I just want to advise you that just because we have circumstances which are relatively similar astrologically, so a lot of people are looking at 1941 as the Jupiter-Uranus or for similar configurations, and that was when the United States got involved in World War II, but the war started before then. The war started, oh gosh, 39 was the official date, but it really started earlier than that. World War II actually started earlier than that. So I think, again, you have to be careful about believing everything you see. There's a fascinating book about the New York Times. I think it's called The Gray Lady Shrugged, which indicates the reporting errors the New York Times did over the years. One of the interesting things actually was seeing the presentations on media, especially on NPR, which I discussed last week. And again, it seems like I pay too much attention to media. That's how our thoughts are formed. That's why I'm worried about it. That's how we make judgments about the world. So a lot of these truths with Rahu, Mars, and Mercury, a lot of truths about wars are coming out. It'll be even more profound when Mercury moves into Aries. Okay, so that would be within about 10 days. And again, I think one of the things we can look at from charts, let me just do this. I'll put the outer planets in. If it does this for me. It doesn't show them. Okay, so we're gonna get out of that. And then we're gonna go to the home page. This will take a second. All right, so let's go over here. Uranus and Neptune. And I hope I got it. All right, let's see this. All right, so Uranus is 28 degrees of Aries. Jupiter's at 29 degrees, 10 minutes. So Jupiter's going to fall out of that range of conjunction fairly quickly, like within about a week or so. Now, there is what they call an orb in astrology. Orbs are essentially ranges of influence. I was brought up in a school of tight orbs, like essentially 3 degrees, 4 degrees max, 5. Anyway, if I want to touch it, if I'm using Western astrology, Neptune is in Pisces, so that obviously we have a fentanyl epidemic and a drug epidemic. So again, this is not dissimilar from the 60s. And Pluto's in Capricorn. So Pluto in Capricorn, the Pluto transits happen very infrequently. So that's why we pay attention to those. But the last time was the Revolutionary War, but we also have a lot of similar combinations in Vedic astrology. So the Uranus-Jupiter conjunction is going to hit Sun-Uranus, can give some overthrows of some governments or some replacements of people. And Venus-Uranus can give some unexpected changes in relationship life. So unexpected developments in relationship life. I think, so if I'm using those, again, there's nothing I don't see that I see from this that isn't reflected in the Vedic chart without these planets, but these are like confirmations. So we can expect more earthquakes because of Mars and K2 in opposition, more water catastrophes because of the Mars K2 opposition. I did say there was going to be there were going to be water problems in Saudi Arabia, which struck me as being unusual, I think, a couple of weeks ago, but actually it hit the United Arab Emirates, which is really close by. So a lot of these things are actually kind of fascinating. I'm going to move on now to looking at, so I want to see if I want to see anything else here. But keep in mind that there's a lot of activity. Saturn is hitting Pisces, is hitting the end of a cycle. And let's see now, it's hitting the end of a 30-year cycle. Jupiter just started the start of a 12-year cycle. Venus is just starting a rebirth. Sun is starting a rebirth cycle. So you'll see a lot of new things come up. But again, I think you'll see a lot of exposure of corruption, lies, deceit over the next couple of months. And also efforts to control or to put the finger in the dike of those particular activities. Economically, I'm not crazy about Jupiter going into Taurus, especially after the transit, after the Saturn transit. It'll let markets fall to their natural order. Jupiter doesn't like Taurus, to be honest with you. It doesn't like Venus in general. And so I'm looking at some kind of an economic letdown because of that placement. I don't look upon those things with relish. And I think you're going to see some shocks in terms of AI and Bitcoin over the next year as well. Okay, so that's just in terms of where planets are moving, because Mars, Mercury, Sun, Venus will be joining Jupiter and Taurus relatively soon. So Mars, it will take a little bit longer. So let's go over to the individual signs. Aries has this exalted Sun in the first house, and along with Venus, so everybody's going to look better than they normally do, along with Jupiter. And in that first house, the sign is going to be very optimistic, at least for the short term. But again, too much spending, too much false optimism, unrealistic desires for the third and the sixth house lord to be in the 12th. For Saturn is in the 11th house, so slow gains, and moon's in the 8th, so that's going to give some depression to relationship partner. For Taurus, Taurus has no planets in the first house. The Lord is in the 12th house, so again, that's going to give heavy spending patterns. You've seen this in governments. A lot of governments are spending more than they actually have. Oh, by the way, a lot of immigration fights over the next couple of months, so keep that in mind. A lot of fights, a lot of violence connected with immigration, both here in the United States and around the world. And that's already happening. So probably more concern. Oh, and also increasing disorder, which I mentioned in the last one, which will lead to a preference for more conservative candidates in the fall or whenever elections are held. The only exception I can see is England. Everywhere else is going to go more. It looks like it will lean more to the right. And that's mainly because the English government hasn't done a particularly good job of managing certain things over there, and their conservative is really much more like our Democratic Party, like our liberal Democratic branch. So it's really rather different than it is in the United States. So English politics lean quite a bit to the left of what they do in the United States. Excuse me. With a few exceptions. So Taurus has Moon in the 7th house, so relationship partners will be depressed, a little bit down. Mercury's in the 10th house, is in the 11th house. So some gains, but there may be some lying friends here. Too much expenses for this sign. And also K2 in the 5th house, children will act a little bit difficult. For Gemini has Mercury in the 10th house, a lot of work, which will seem like it will be spinning in circles. A lot of frustration with work actually finally coming to an end as Mercury starts to move towards Aries. And this sign will see some gains within about 10 days. For K2 in the 4th, some disruption in home life. Moon is in the 6th. This sign has to be careful about illnesses or injuries, getting depressed about those things. Saturn's in the 9th house. Good for overall luck. And for this sign, some problems with knees and some problems with career support. That'll pass within a couple of weeks. And finally, some gains for this sign. For Cancer, so that's for Gemini and for Taurus. So Taurus, to go over again, Taurus, a lot of focus on career life, questionable gains, too much expenses. Gemini, disruption at home, some worries over health. Saturn in the 9th, slow gain of luck. And career frustrations end within about 2 weeks. And some financial gains this week. For Cancer, that's what Mercury debilitated us to me. For Cancer, Cancer has Moon in the 4th house, K2's in the 3rd. So this sign will have a lot of bravery, a lot of courage, but it'll be worried about romantic involvements in relationships and also children. And Saturn's in the 8th, so relationship partners will seem to be distant or a little bit moody. Rahu, Mercury, and Mars are in the 9th house. This is actually not a bad combination. Mars is a good planet for this rising sign, or this sun sign. It will give luck career-wise. And Venus, Jupiter, and Sun, it will give a lot of prominence to the sign career-wise. But again, slow growth, at least until Jupiter hits May 1st. It's Taurus May 1st. For Leo, Leo has Saturn in the 7th, so just some problems with relationship partners. K2's in the 2nd, not much money coming in. Moon is in the 4th, a little bit of worry about home life, excuse me. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Eighth house, a lot of investigation into assets. Again, Mars is a good planet. It's not good to have it in the eighth house, but it is good for attaining assets or legacies, but there may be some disputes around it. And Venus, Jupiter, and Sun are in the ninth house, good for financial growth for the Sun. So this now for Virgo, Ketu's in the first, Rahu and Mercury and Mars. So relationship partners may be a little bit dishonest or a little bit weak during this week. That'll pass within about a week and a half. And this can also cause some stress for relationship partners. Venus, Jupiter, Sun in the eighth house, a lot of unexpected interest in metaphysics or research. Moon is in the third house, so some fear that ambitions won't manifest. That'll pass by midweek, definitely. And let me just see now. Yeah, Saturn's in the sixth, so there can be some unexpected health problems. And let's see now, seventh house, we've already gone over that. So that's about it for Virgo. For Libra, Libra has Venus in the seventh house, a lot of attention on relationship matters, a lot of attention on learning, a lot of attention on boosting yourself up, just essentially making yourself heard. Moon's in the second house, some anxiety about money. Saturn's aspecting that moon. There's some feeling that money will be a problem over the next couple of weeks. It won't last that long. That anxiety won't last that long. Saturn is in the fifth house. That's actually good. So work will produce good results for this sign. Mars and Mercury and Rahu, there can be unexpected illnesses connected with lungs and also with energy levels. Venus, Jupiter, Sun in the seventh house. We already discussed this to a certain extent. So it's lucky for relationships. It's lucky for new partnerships. But with Venus there, there'll be more focus on romantic relationships. So again, that focus on study will come up again when Jupiter enters the eighth house, and you'll see a lot of interest in occult or metaphysical studies or the underground. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Moon in the first house, so it makes this sign a little bit depressed as I'm doing this particular broadcast. But again, that'll pass within about a day. And finally, Saturn's in the fourth house. Excuse my scratching. Saturn's in the fourth house. Mars and Rahu and Mercury in the fifth house, so kids may be a little bit deceitful. Venus, Sun, Jupiter are in the sixth house, and maybe some problems or some animosity with relationship partners. Again, this sign should not trust friends. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius is in Sagittarius is Lord is in the fifth house along with Venus and Sun. That's a lucky combination for this sign. It gives a lot of good luck based upon past experiences, good luck to children if you have any. But home life will feel a little bit dishonest or a little bit fraught with trying to discover the truth. Not a lot of career recognition for this sign during this week. Saturn does aspect that Venus, Sun, Jupiter combination, so children will be a little bit destructive, although they will be productive as well. So again, not a bad week for Sagittarius, but I think it should be cautious in its optimism. For Capricorn, Capricorns Lord is in the second house, so there's a lot of focus on money. Rahu, Mars, Mercury, there'll be a lot of desire to lie, to get ahead. Try to resist that. It's not good karma, it's not good action. Sun, Venus, and Jupiter, you already have a high status. Don't wreck it with that temptation to inflate yourself. And let's see now. K2's in the ninth, unexpected difficulties from bosses. Moon is in the 11th house, unexpected gains, but they won't feel very pleasant. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Rahu, Mercury, and Mars in the second house, Venus, Sun, and Jupiter in the third house. So this will make the sign actually very polite, very easygoing. Although it will be a little bit harsh at times because of that Mars, Mercury, Rahu conjunction in the second house. And it's going to have to watch the trait to put down people or get into arguments over the next couple of months. That's the big downfall. It has a lot of authority right now. Saturn in Aquarius makes it very interesting in politics. And I think one of the things, and also in innovations, and Saturn aspecting Venus, Sun, and Jupiter creates kind of a Dana Yoga or wealth producing combination for this chart. So that's actually good. And it'll give increased wealth to the wife. Moon is in the 10th house, not very good for career aspects, but again, they'll pass pretty quickly. Finally, for Pisces, Pisces has Mars, Rahu, and Mercury in it. Again, there is this temptation to lie, to inflate yourself, to make yourself seem bigger than you have to, and in order to get money. I'd avoid that, try to avoid that over the next couple of weeks. Venus, Sun, and Jupiter are in the second house, so that actually does indicate money is coming your way, although albeit slowly. K2's in the 7th house, some difficulty with relationship partners. Moon is in the 9th in Scorpio. This actually indicates a lot of intelligence for this sign. Moon in this particular sign is in Jyeshtha Nakshatra. It's one of the smartest nakshatras in the zodiac. So even though this moon is a little bit depressed, it's still very smart. So this will give a lot of good solutions, a lot of good resolutions to problems. Now let's look at the time and space chart. I hope I have time to go through this properly. Okay, so as I said earlier, some problems with land and water in Hawaii, some potential for fraud about land or stealing land in Hawaii, and also Rahu, Mercury in Vancouver and in Seattle, Oregon, and California, some potential for political deceit and news deceit. I know that Google has essentially frozen out media resources, and so this could be what the line means, but I think it's a little bit more political than that. Venus is going through Arizona and Baja, Mexico, and there's a sun line going over here. So I would tie all these Venus, Sun, Jupiter lines together because they're all aspected by Saturn. And this indicates increasing government control over this part, and especially in the United States, because we have Saturn essentially hemming in the United States and large parts of South America and Mexico, okay? So, and Canada. So again, look for increased governmental control, efforts to get away from that. This goes all the way down to San Juan, all the way into Guyana, and all the way into throughout Brazil and into Argentina. So I'm just seeing a lot of potential for abuse of power right now. And we have a descending moon line running through here. So there's some economic anxiety in Brazil and Argentina as well, and also some conflict in Brazil, and some public scandals coming up in Brazil and perhaps Iceland. We have a Venus line running through Northern Ireland, Sun line running through France, and a Jupiter line running through Europe. So all these countries are facing economic hardship, although they will be trying to reassert themselves. This part of Africa, as I've said before, is pretty much dominated by France. I think France is going to have some problems, some definite increasing problems with this part of the world. And the Jupiter line is running through Poland and also close to Ukraine, not quite in it. And we have a Saturn and a Mars line running through Ukraine. Now, Ukraine just got a bunch of money, and there's a Rahu line over here, but it looks like the money will not be used correctly or properly. That's just how I'm reading this, because there'll be some scandal connected with the money, and also some scandal connected with both Saudi Arabia and the moon. There are no lines running through Israel, interestingly enough, but it is hemmed between Mars and Saturn. And so is Turkey. So some potential for earthquakes, earth changes. But again, we're talking about really Ankara region of Turkey, maybe north, some more earthquake activity up here, and possibly some earthquake activity in Western Turkey, Syria, and even into Central or Eastern Europe. Moon and okay, so we have that Mercury Rahu line. So we're going to be getting false news out of Iran, false news out of Moscow, which is not a big surprise, false news out of Kuwait, and Sun and Venus attempts to control the governments in both Pakistan and Afghanistan. Pakistan is in really dire straits right now, and it's particularly close to the largest country by population in the world, India, and it will be affecting India. India will be taking more oppressive steps, so will Russia, and so will Ladakh, and Bangladesh. If we go down here to just bordering on Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, Cambodia is right down here. We have a Jupiter line, so again, there'll be more attempts at controlling media and more attempts at controlling the population. And there's a moon line running right through China, next to critical commercial islands, and down through the Philippines and down into Indonesia, Borneo, and Australia. So more government control, more scandals. Mars is hitting Japan, some minor possibility of an earthquake. And over here in Australia, we have this Mercury Rahu line, which I'm not crazy about, because that, to me, that shows the exercise of governmental control and excessive governmental control. And Venus is running down through New Zealand, and there will be more repressive measures in New Zealand for at least for another 2 to 3 weeks. So that's how I see it this week. Hope I didn't run over, and thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you all. Thank you. Please share, like, and subscribe if you see fit. I am having some guests show up shortly. on this channel. I need to do some editing. And that's it for me for this week. Sorry about the follow-up earlier this morning. I hope I was within time just now, and I'll see you next week. Thanks a lot, folks. Bye-bye. God bless you, and I love every one of you.